Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about stages of no contact for an avoidant ex.
This is really important, so listen up.
Many of you are going through a breakup with an avoidant partner and you are scared and confused and devastated. And this should give you some insight into what we see avoidance going through. Mm-hmm. First of all, I want to say, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We never ask people to subscribe and click the bell. And thank you for supporting us and sharing our work with other people. We always appreciate that. This is a big topic that a lot of people ask me about in our calls because they're dealing with an avoidant, and in many ways their avoidant partner is the exact opposite of them. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I don't understand this because I could never feel like that. I would never think like that. And so they're desperate to understand them and to figure out, can this turn around? Will they change their mind? Will they ever reach out to me?
Right, and not only that, but they're on the other side of the breakup, right?
Yeah.
A breakup is very different for the dumper than it is for the dumpee, and it can be so hard to understand what your ex is going through, which is why a lot of these stages of type videos gain a lot of popularity, is because you're understanding what happens next, right? There's some kind of a theory, some kind of a concept that you can grasp on what's going to happen next in your breakup. And so we try to share this with you to help you understand more of your ex's perspective, and in this video in particular, more of that avoidant ex.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand the stages because for you who are not understanding the breakup, it feels like how they're acting at the time of the breakup is how they're always going to think and feel. But that is not the case. And this is why we tell you, leave them alone. Stop reaching out because feelings change like the clouds that move across the sky. But any pressure on them is not going to allow them to experience those feelings.
Right. And so you really want to act like you have one more chance with your ex. You know, we talk about the motivating power of hope and the idea that you would be able to reattract your ex, that you would be able to work on those skills in order to make a healthy relationship possible, can be one of those things that makes you say, okay, well, let me see what this is about, which is what we love, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is some kind of personal growth clickbait, all right? Cat's out of the bag.
So what's the first stage?
All right, the first stage that an avoidant ex will experience is relief, right? And so this is one where it can be difficult to understand because a lot of us are feeling the exact opposite. We're not feeling relief at all. We're feeling panic. We're feeling anxiety. We're feeling stress.
Utterly devastated.
Yes, yeah. And so
I couldn't spit that out.
That's how devastated
I was so devastated I can't even say it.
Right. And so for somebody who's more avoidantly attached, we have to remember that intimacy, vulnerability, that takes a lot of work. That takes emotional energy. It takes emotional labor. And so when a relationship is severed, there is just that moment where they're finally able to take a breath. They return back to their independence, and it feels good for them because that has been the coping skill that they have learned throughout their lifetime that keeps them safe, makes them feel grounded, and makes them functional, right? Yep. So it feels to them kind of like returning home to themselves. In their mind, they are the only people that they can rely on. I can only rely on myself. I am the person who gets things done the right way, right?
Yep. I could only count on me.
Right. Mm-hmm. So a breakup in that sense can give them that sense of relief. They can finally let some of their guards down. They can be 100% vulnerable with only one person in their mind, and that is themselves, their own thoughts, sometimes even if that.
Yeah.
Right?
And it feels so personal to you. I totally understand that feeling of, oh my gosh, how could they end this relationship with me? How could they, I can't believe they wouldn't want me in their life anymore. But it's not personal in many ways. Trust me. Avoidants are very different than anxious people in a lot of ways. But when you're so anxious, you don't understand that. So I've got a good way of looking at it for you, okay? Look at it this way. If you can lift 200 pounds easily, carrying a 50-pound bag, that's not going to be a problem, right? You could walk around with it all day long, probably. If you could carry 200 pounds, no problem. But if you can only lift 50 pounds, carrying 50 pounds is going to be a major struggle for you. Think about it. You're at your max. My limit is 50 and I'm barely holding on here.
PR.
My body's in pain. I'm falling over. I'm going to drop it on my little toes, right? So you got to understand, for them, a romantic connection feels like 50 pounds when they can barely carry 50 pounds. So think about that. When you could really put yourself in that position and understand that, you're like, oh, now I get why this is so hard for them. For the anxious person, you're lifting 200 pounds, no problem. You're like, I'll carry this relationship all day, every day, no problem. I'm never going to let it go. I would rather die than put this relationship down, right? Because they value it so much, and they have so much more ability and so much more emotional strength to hold it and lift it.
Right. And to take this analogy even further, I don't know, my gym goers that are out there, but when you are holding something heavy and you finally let it go, there is that feeling of immediate relief. You know, you're no longer straining your muscles. You're no longer sweating and using all your force. You're able to finally relax. You're able to take a breather. You're able to rest before you're even thinking about, starting the next set, right?
Yeah.
And so this is what it can be like for somebody who's avoidant. They've been feeling like they've been carrying this, and in your eyes, you're thinking, you're only carrying 50 pounds.
Yeah. It's so true. Yeah, it's so true.
Right? And on their end, they're thinking, this is my emotional max. I've never been this vulnerable with anybody before in my entire life. I've told you some things that I haven't told anybody. Right? And for them, they're saying, well, this is nothing. Tell me more. What?
Yeah.
Right? And so it's all really relative. And for somebody who's more avoidant, they have less emotional availability, less emotional energy that they can give. Now, somebody who's more anxious, just to take this analogy even further, right? When you are trying to add more pressure and trying to force a relationship.
That connect. Let's connect. I want to talk. I want to see you. I miss you.
Imagine what that does to their weight. Right?
It's more. Yeah, it's like the more you want to see them, talk to them, get serious with them, the more weight it is, and they could barely hold 50. Now you've dropped another 25 on them, maybe 100.
Right. And so over time, this becomes exhausting. This wears at them, and at this point, this is not something that's making them stronger. It's making them want to drop the weight faster.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is part of a way to think about the dynamic that's happening here, and one of those stages too. They decide to, drop this weight. They feel that relief that happens, and it feels good. They finally get that moment to rest.
So it's more about it. Don't think of yourself as the weight. It's the relationship, putting a stressor on them that they're not used to, or an uncomfortableness on them, a feeling of love that they're not used to. It's not so much personally you as them being in a situation that they're not strong enough to handle.
Right. And sometimes we can put some of our expectations on someone, and I don't mean just the typical expectations in a relationship, but those that are stemming from fear and anxiety that might not even really be our real needs anyways, right? It could just be things that we're trying to control because we're feeling them distance, and then it just becomes this cycle, right? And so we can do these things with a lot of pressuring even in the breakup, right? When we're trying to send some manipulative texts to try to get them to change their mind, when we're trying to have a conversation and force a conversation, right? These can be some things that are adding pressure to them at this point.
Yeah, and that's why we say don't reach out. No contact. But no contact, as we teach it, is not reaching out. I know there's a lot of different people that say different things. We don't want you to ignore your ex. We want them to reach out. We just don't want you to reach out to them, because that is just more weight on them. The begging, the pleading, the handwritten letters, the grand gestures, the clean slate messages, the good reminder texts, all things that are more pressure, more obligations, more feelings of you're trying to control them. And it's kind of like the more that you do those things, it's like they just put the weight down and you're like, hey, can you pick that back up? Can you do another set? And they're like, wait, what? No. And it's like you're pushing them to do more reps when they just set it down and they're exhausted.
Right. And so this leads into one of the next stages, which is elation. So once they've been able to take a breather, now they're able to enjoy some of their own independence, right? Now they're starting to ease more into what it's like to take control of their own decisions, to not have to think as a unit, as a couple, but they think just for themselves and on their own. Once again, this feels good for an avoidant because this is their safe place, right? Them doing things for themselves. And so this can be very difficult on your end because you're seeing your ex happy, right? They might be parading on social media things that are bringing them joy. Maybe they're going out all of a sudden a lot. Maybe they are traveling. Maybe they're doing some things that they've said that they wanted to do, right? You're thinking, man, I wanted to do that with them. I thought I was going to be alongside with them to grow and enjoy all of these experiences. So this can be one of the most heartbreaking stages.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably the hardest part. Because you're like, before it was like, what's happening with them? Now you're like, they're happy. They're happy without me. I knew it.
Right.
Oh, man, it's brutal.
Right. And so at this point, they're very content with themselves and the decision that they've made. They're feeling like, man, I made the right decision. See, I'm able to get things done. I'm able to accomplish the things that I've wanted to do. Maybe they're even trying new things, right? So for them, this can be sometimes an experimental stage, sometimes hyper independent. Sometimes people focus on work and on goals and on achievements. And they are able to really revel in this stage more if you're able to give them the space to do so. And here is why this is actually a good thing. Because if you are constantly pestering them, trying to say, hey, get back in this relationship. Hey, don't forget about us. Hey, let's work this out. Right? Then that's going to create a lot more irritability and tension in them because they want to be in the elation stage. They want to be able to enjoy the benefits of their decision at this point, at this stage, right? So things do shift, which is what we're about to talk about as well. So remember that staying in no contact does affect these stages.
Absolutely. This is where you're going to get some power back without realizing it yet. Now, the elation, they're tired of going out. All the things that they thought were going to be so fun and exciting about being single aren't so great anymore. They're over it. They're bored of it. And now, instead of going out at night, they're sitting at home and they start to think about you, reminiscing about you. Nostalgia, comparisons, thinking about, well, all these new people that I'm dating or talking to, they don't compare. Or, man, I really miss what we used to do together. I miss our life together. And they start to think more and more about where you're at and what you're doing. And now they start to shift and wonder like, well, have you moved on? Have you started dating other people? They start to stalk your Instagram and your social media and your WhatsApp and your Facebook and your LinkedIn, everything you can imagine. Because now they are starting to feel what it was like for you at that time of the breakup. But this is why you'd never want to reach out to an ex and why you want them to come to you when they are ready. Okay? We don't want you to ignore them, but we want you to allow them to reach out and then you take things slow from there. Now, many of you will find out that your ex is talking to somebody new or dating somebody new and you are devastated and convinced they're going to run off into the sunset. I totally understand. I know what that feels like. But a lot of times what actually happens is they start to compare the new person to you. And when you leave them alone and that new person starts making all those mistakes and their attachment issues start to come out, which they always do, that they don't look so great. And thinking about how great you were, you start to look a lot better. And now they're starting to think, well, maybe I shouldn't have ended this relationship. What was I thinking? This new person I thought was so great and so wonderful, they're not that great at all. They're kind of crazy, as a matter of fact. And then they start to think about you more and more and look for excuses to contact you.
Right. And you have to remember that for somebody who's more avoidant, it is people few and far in between that they really truly let their guard down, especially romantically, right? So a lot of times you'll see avoidance, they might have really close, deep friendships, but just on that romantic plane, on somebody who's really there with them, really vulnerable with them, that's not so often, right? Because it costs them a lot. It takes a lot of energy for them to get there. And so in those moments where it's quiet, where it's 3 a.m., where they're experiencing that nostalgia, those are going to be the relationships that stick out to them. Okay, so just when talking about that natural contrast that happens when reflecting back on our relationships, the depth of your relationship is important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's next? If they're thinking in a more balanced and clear-headed way,
Really?
right?
They get there?
They might. They just might, right? Sometime after the breakup, they can enter more of this stage where they're self-reflecting, they're thinking a bit more rationally, right? They might be considering some of the factors of the relationship, they might be considering their decision, what led them to the decision, and they might slowly start to let go of some of the things that have been holding them back from being more vulnerable with you, right? And we hear this from avoidance all the time. Some of you don't believe it, but we do, where they say, I wish I would have been more affectionate with my partner. I wish I didn't let this petty thing or this stupid flaw that I focused on get in the way of our connection. So this happens to the dumpers, where they let go of that blaming nature that keeps them distant from you, right? Because now they have the space from you. They don't need to do all these distancing tactics anymore because you've given them space, right? They're useless at this point. And so that's where they start to self-reflect and think, man, that was one of the close connections that I had. Remember, even those who are avoidant need connection. You know, they are human beings too.
Yep. Even though you're like, no, they're not.
They're robotic.
They are robots.
Right.
No, but a big point there is that taking accountability and not so much blaming it all on you. Initially, a lot of times they just blame everything on you. But when you see them get to a point where they're starting to be more accountable and taking responsibility, that's a really good sign.
Right. And this leads right into the next stage, which is regret and sadness.
Yeah.
So once they're able to get to that place where they've maybe processed some of the anger, some of the bitterness, some of the blaming, they get to that place where they're maybe a little bit more balanced. That's when they start to experience more of that regret and sadness and really start to feel the loss.
Yep.
Then more of those positive memories start to come up. They start to remember those sweet and tender moments with you. They start to remember those moments of connection because we all need connection. And especially if the rebound falls apart, right? Which happens. And so as a result, they start to think about things that they could have done differently in the relationship. We touched on this. And absence of their partner, the person that they had ended the relationship with, really starts to settle in.
So then they get to this place where all these things are building up in their mind and they don't know what to do because they're afraid to reach out to you. They're afraid you're going to be angry or reject them. And they're going to think, why would they ever want to talk to me after what I did? And so they often do what I call the indirect direct approach, meaning they contact you directly, but they're not direct about what they really want, what their real agenda is. They say, I miss the cat. Have you seen my green sweat socks? All right. Have you seen my old backpack? The bike is the one I've been hearing a lot recently. So they're just looking for reasons to contact you to dip their toe in the pool and see how cold it is, right? They want to see, are you going to yell at me? Are you going to tell me to F off? Are you going to tell me to drop dead?
Right.
Or are you going to ignore me? It just keeps building up more inside of them to the point where they do those things. They do those reach outs. And as long as you don't come on too strong and as long as you're not too cold, you got to find that balance, right? If you're too cold, they're going to feel rejected. If you come on too strong, they're going to be like, run away again. So as long as you can find a place that you're not looking too eager, too desperate, they're going to start to try and interact with you more and see if this is fixable, if you're willing to, because sometimes they get rejected again, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of people reject the dumper. So there's a lot of different things that are going inside of them. It's not just this one concrete thought. It's like a carousel that they're going on where they don't know what you're going to do. They don't know how you're going to react. They don't know if you're going to want to fix this. They don't know what you're going to be looking for. And so take it slow and don't come on too strong and don't give away your cards either.
Right. And these stages are so important. So remember that your behavior can impact these stages. If you have a hard time giving them that space, if you are constantly badgering them, showing up at their door, reaching out nonstop, not giving them the chance to even enter the relief stage, this is just going to prolong their irritation. The first step will be irritation with you. It won't be relief, right? And that's just going to elongate everything else. So you really want to be able to give people time to process, really be able to trust that there are stages, right? Just like with anything else in life, the cycle of life, right? Things change, things transform. When we're in the moment and we're experiencing high emotional intensity, our brain will tell us that the future and the past is all informed by how we're feeling. We think, well, I'm feeling dreary right now. My past is dreary, my future is dreary, right? But if we're able to remind ourselves, no, things change. Things go through stages, right? They don't just stay stagnant. There's barely anything in this world that really, truly stays stagnant. Many things are in constant change. Breakups, relationships, emotions. These are all things that change.
Yeah. And the anxiety that you feel at the time of the breakup, as long as you let things play out the way we talk about, there's a good chance they're going to feel that, even if it's months later. I know it's hard to believe, but we see it so often. We're confident about it. But again, your behavior is going to make it more likely that they start getting anxious about losing you and feeling the loss, or less likely. That's why we suggest not reaching out to them. Now, every situation is complicated, and I mean, all day long, all our calls are different.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You can have 5 different calls, and they're all going to be completely different. You're going to be like, might see some elements, but every relationship is different. Every breakup is different, and that's why we offer coaching for you guys. We know what it's like to be in your shoes.
I'll say, whenever anybody starts a call, sometimes they'll start a call and they'll say, you know, every relationship is different and every breakup is different. I know it's about to be a wild one. I know.
You strap yourself in.
Yeah,
do you have
a
seatbelt?
I do. I'm like, this one's going to be different.
Yeah, and believe me, everybody thinks that their situation... Sometimes I hear people with a very mild situation, but like, mine, you're never going to have heard something like mine before. And I'm like, I hear this 4 times a day. There's nothing that crazy about this situation. And then you hear some really wild ones, and you're like, whoa, okay.
They're probably like, you hear this every day, don't you? No, actually.
Yeah, those are people who are like, you probably hear a lot of things like this.
It's so interesting how that works.
So if you want to get our help personally, you could do that on our website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching, and I do Zoom calls. Coach Victoria is also available for Zoom calls.
I'm here to chat whenever you'd like, and please surprise me.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.